Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Star Ate My Hamster.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon Amiga gameplay guide and review. This time we'll be checking out Star Ate My Hamster. This was designed and published by Codemasters and released on the Amiga in 1989. On that title sequence we can see some images, and this one happens to be Morrissey, and some familiar faces from the 1980s, because don't forget this was released in 89. It was based on the original game which came out on the ZX Spectrum in 1988 on all the 8-bit platforms. So this being a 1980s game, you won't expect some marvellous graphics and some amazing music in it, but what we do get is some nicely drawn pictures on the intro, and you can see Tina Turner there. Credits, we can also see the producers of this game, and it was coded by Colin Jones, of which we will find out a bit later on, and I'm not sure if he converted the code from the 8-bits onto the Amiga, but as you'll see playing this game, it's basically a text adventure where we get to type things in, only it's got extra graphics on it as well, and it's comprised of only a few screens. And you can see directors Richard Darling, so Codemasters were definitely involved in the production of this game, and unfortunately that's meant to be Phil Collins, a rather fat Phil Collins, playing the drums. And so without further ado, all we need to do is press that fire button to begin the game itself. We begin working for Cecil Pitt, otherwise known as Cesspit, and his assistant Clive, and he is a record producer, and first of all he needs to pick a number of artists from the local paper, and so we can choose the number of artists at the beginning of the game, and for beginners maybe 2 rock stars is good. If you have 4 then you'll make life even more difficult. And then if you only have 1, then that's also pretty difficult as well. So 2 usually means that's a good compromise, and then we get to see the stars that are available to hire. And it might surprise you to learn that there are 50 stars in this game, all based around the 1980s, and every one of those will be lovingly drawn onto our Amiga, and it will also tell us the name of that star as well. All of these are based on real people, and Phil Collins again, a rather bad rendition of him, but you can see generally Madonna is very well drawn, and Lemmy, and so most of these artists are still alive today. That's supposed to be Salt and Pepper. Unfortunately one of those passed away, and Gary Glitter, hopefully he's passed away, and Prince, so hopefully there will be a few stars here that you recognise, and they all have big profiles in the 1980s. It's fun to check out all these people, and it's a big decision at the very start of the game, because all these stars will cost different amounts, and that's per week, and so sometimes it's best to choose someone who's rather cheap and mix them up with someone who's rather expensive, rather than going for 2 rather expensive guys or 2 rather cheap guys, because a cheap act married with a cheap one isn't going to create a huge great performance, and if you have guys or ladies that are too expensive, unfortunately it means you'll probably run out of cash. So that's supposed to be Paul McCartney, doesn't look much like him, and Meatloaf, of course, the classic Meatloaf, Annie Lennox. So some of these are well drawn, and it's definitely, well, Brian Ferry, it's definitely obvious who most of these are, and that's very good. It means that we get some comedy out of this game, and comedy in this game, it definitely doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's meant to be a light-hearted game. So let's select first of all this one. He looks a bit like Nick Rhodes, but it's supposed to be Stevie Wonder, and so that's our first one selected. So all we need to do now is to figure out who we're going to pick next. We don't really want Derek Claptout, and that's spelt differently on the packaging, but Derek Claptout, Bruce Springsteen, he's very expensive at $9,000 a week. So who do we get? Well, Cliff Richard, he's only $920 a week, and this one is only $200 a week. Eventually, by moving through all these stars, you'll reach the end of the list and you'll rotate all the way back to the beginning of the list again. But hopefully with a huge number on offer, it gives plenty of scope. And this game does take some time to play. You might notice that this Playguide goes on for over an hour, so you can play it lightly, but we're going to play an entire year in this game, starting, you might notice, January the 1st. So it's going to take a whole year to get through this game, and I'm going to be skipping out some of the boring parts, but hopefully we can get on through to it. So Noddy Holder, he's pretty okay at $450 a week, and Ted Nugent $600 a week. I guess $600 a week isn't too bad, although it would have been helpful to memorise how much Stevie Wonder cost us in the first place. So moving through these artists, and Harvey Headband, I think that's supposed to be somebody from Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler, and Cod is meant to be Fish. I've no idea who Fish is. Hopefully they could have changed that to Jean-Michel Jarre. So that takes us all the way around, and this guy is $9,000 a week, and so Charlie Watts, and so that's pretty expensive at $9,000 a week, but you expect somebody that costs that amount of money will be good for us, so let's select him. And so that's our two guys selected. We can now change that if we really want to two other candidates, and we can also give them a name as well. I think it will also give us or suggest a name at the beginning of the game, but we'll just type in the name at random, and at the beginning of the game, definitely practicing with your new band is what you want to do, and then the better they practice, the better they are, and that wastes 1, 2, 3 days. That depends on how many days you've selected to practice in this game. It does start off pretty tough because it's wages time after the first week, and we haven't even started touring and gigging yet. So let's start gigging in the clubs. Let's check out this. It's us live on stage in the clubs, and we can't ask for much money at this stage because we aren't very good and we've only just started practicing, and maybe you should practice for 2 weeks, but that will bankrupt us. So it does start off with a huge, great, deep difficulty curve at the start of the game, especially if you pick two artists, one of which costs a fortune. Every time we go out on tour we'll get some money, and when we return to the office we'll also get offers as well, and sometimes it's good to reject offers at this early stage before the band is any good, because those are going to be not very good offers at this stage. And so let's charge £5 this time and see if we get any better luck. And yes, we've sold 500 tickets at £5 each, and that means the monetary value is slowly going up. Definitely at this stage it's good to get lots of money in the bank, but you can't do that whilst the band is no good. So definitely avoid the bars, because that's where you get the least amount of money, and go straight on to the clubs, because when you're playing in clubs you get to rehearse live on stage in front of drunk people, and they don't really care if you're any good or not, and they'll tell you if you're good or not, and that means the esteem of the band will go up. So that's what we're doing at the moment, playing small time venues and not charging very much money for it. Again, another signing is on the cards, only 5% royalties, which is crummy. You really want a lot more than that. So some of these record labels are also based on real ones, when we still have record labels. So I really should be practicing right now, and you can also load and save a game at any point as well, and that's definitely important. And before any publicity stunt, I definitely recommend saving up the game in case it goes wrong. And you can see in this case our lead singer has died in a nuclear war, and that means that lead singer will be wiped off for the rest of the year, and that means we're down to one guy. So it's lucky I saved up before the publicity stunt, and now we can recover that guy. So bringing back somebody from the dead is definitely something you need to do in this game. And Star Ate My House, that sounds like a great headline, and that's a lot better than the one previously, and it means we don't die. So you can die in this game, there are deaths, so you have to remember to save the game up regularly as soon as you get through those publicity stunts. So looks like we're going for a gig again. Let's go for the clubs. Well, the universities, you can start, if you start with a low amount, and £2 for a university. As soon as you get somewhere in the clubs, there's no point carrying on with the clubs. You might as well start with the universities and start at the bottom with them, and then that means that you get the youth on your side, and playing in small university venues is how many bands got started, and particularly this band, particularly if you're at university studying at the time. So we're at university at the moment, we're charging a pitiful amount for our gigs, but they're not very good anyway. And so let's return back to that university now. Let's charge £5 for another 2 nights. You really don't want to sell out at this stage, because that wastes time, and definitely if you can get a bit of money together this early in the game, it's great, because we're already in the middle of January and I'm going to be paying the wages pretty soon enough, and so it's make sure to keep float around 25,000 in the bank at this stage. %10 royalties? I don't think so, not for this band, because that's a really wasted offer. Then Clive will tell him to drop dead and get lost, and you can see "Get Lost and Kick Me" written on his t-shirts, and that's again another funny thing to look out for. You can also see the boss has various things scattered around the table, and the Stun newspaper as well, which is where we get the headlines from. So again, I really should be practicing, but I'm not. I'm continuing with the universities. We're now up to £10 for 2 nights, because we can move through these venues in various stages until we get into the big ones, and we really should be practicing. But definitely if you want to release an album, you want to be practicing before that, even though it wastes time. The only reason why we're actually going out on the road at the moment is to get some income, and we're out to 33,000, which is just as well, because it costs money to go out on the road, but it does mean that we get it back. So let's load and save again and check out another publicity stunt, and let's see if that has any great effect. Rockstar's Life of Lust, so that's fantastic. It means we get some more prestige and more publicity for that, and as long as we keep that going, and remember hopefully to save after that, to make sure that that saves to memory, then that means we can continue. So we're still gigging, we're up to concert halls now. We charge you £2 for a concert hall. At this point your rock stars won't really be demanding much, and Polygram Records is on the phone. They're offering 15%, so we're safe to ignore that right about now. But they're not demanding much, but we can give them something anyway, and you best start off small, but I'm going for clothing, and then that makes sure that they stand out on the stage. So definitely start off small with gifts, and then they won't demand some huge ones early on in the game, and it keeps them sweet in the meantime. So Rockstar and Callous Calamity Snub, I think that's a good headline. At least we're not dead, and so that also gives us some good news. But bad news, it's wages time. That means we go down to 8 grand. Can we afford, getting towards the end of January, can we afford the days of practice? No is the answer to that. We're going to have to go back out onto the road, up to concert halls. I'm going to charge £2 again, and I really should have been moving up to a £5, but we're out there. Press fire, crazy boss. Shall we play the same rock stars? And it looks like, well, it can give us different options when we're moving through the game, and so we're skipping forward now onto another publicity stunt, and we've managed to get the cash from that venue, hopefully, and so charging a small amount in a big venue at least gives us some money early on. And charity support work, definitely that is something to be avoided. If you come up with the wrong call with charity work, then that gives us some bad publicity. So you can't save up before the charity appears, otherwise, well, you'll just have to reload the save from before that happened at some point. And sometimes if you say no to a good charity, that gives us bad publicity, and if you say yes to a bad charity, that also gives us some bad publicity. Sometimes it's worth saving up the game every time you return back into the office, and that means you can't make any mistakes, because as soon as you've wasted a turn, that wastes the day. So that's now wasted a day. Whatever we choose to do, the calendar will move forward, and again we're floating around 18,000 in the bank, so let's do some more gigging. And hopefully we can start to crane in now that big amount of cash. Finally, it's the end of January, so let's practice a bit more. And every time we practice, it means hopefully we'll get a bit better. So we're now onto stadiums, it looks like. Let's try £2 in a stadium. And you can tell from the text at the very top of the screen if you're doing well, because if you sell out, and hopefully a stadium holds 10,000 tickets, and if you sell out 10,000 seats and get £2 each, then that means you can get some decent amount of money out of these. And we really want to be selling out all of the seats for all of the venues, and sometimes if you go through the venues and select too high a price, then you won't sell them out. So it's best to go on to the next highest venue and go for a lower price, and that means that ultimately you'll get the cash. We're on to a stadium at the moment. That means we're selling it out 10,000 and we're now getting 50,000 each time. And it's really going to take 1 million before we get anywhere near our first album release because that's very expensive. So we're now on February the 5th, and you can see the sales chart at the very bottom of the screen. We've now got our first 100,000 in the bank, which means hopefully that sales chart will start to rise when we release something. And so let's go out for another gig. We didn't sell out the stadium, but we did get 98,000, which isn't too bad because it means that our total cash is going up. But if we make the wrong choices with the publicity stunts and the charities, that money can be wiped out. And there's a guy on the phone now from Sony Electrics. He wants to sponsor us for 100,000. Well, I think that's a good offer. I really do. And it's not talking about any percents here because it's not a distribution deal. It's simply a bonus for sponsorship. And I really think that I'm going to accept that. Yes, I'd love for Sony to join us at sponsorship. Unfortunately, that can all go wrong, and definitely will go wrong later on. And there's more record deals on the horizon from Mega Bucks Records, and they want to sign us now for 20% royalties. And I'd love to join your amazing, so it looks like we've accepted that. Megabucks for 20% royalties. I really should have been hanging out for 25, but that really does make a huge difference when it comes to the record sales. We're now sponsored by Sony Electronics, and so that will appear on the poster, which is a bit of a gimmick, which appears before every show because shows back in the 1980s always had a poster outside the venue, not so much these days. So we're not selling out the stadium, but we're still getting 94,000 per venue, and that's fantastic. That means that we're getting that per day that we go out on the road. And sometimes it gives us an unwinnable opportunity because we didn't save before this and we've got a huge amount of cash. If we say yes and we get it wrong, then that's bad news, and if we say no and snub the guy, we'll also get it wrong. And the prince's trust, okay, that was a wise decision. We get to keep that cash. So again, it's force of habit. You really should be saving the game every single time. And what I'm going to give him, I'm going to give him some jewels. We've got the money, we can keep them sweet, and we're going to spoil them, but I really shouldn't be spoiling them at this stage because that will mean that they get picky a bit later on. And well, I'm trying to give them some bling bling and then they look great on the stage. And by this stage we're now playing stadiums around the world, or at least around Britain, and that means that we should be looking great with the best clothing and the best jewellery. It is possible to press fire and skip through all these screens, and hopefully I'll begin to start doing that during this playthrough. This was recorded live, this was just me playing the game. I haven't really played it before in my life, in fact I haven't played it before in my life, but I did look up the tips online before I started playing it, and that gave me a helpful hand as to how to even start the game. And they give us a few tips, but it didn't hold your hand. I certainly didn't watch a walkthrough. But this game can take at least over an hour if you're playing it well, because we're going to be playing it all year and we're going to be skipping through a few parts of it. So we're now into February. Let's save that game up again. And I really want to be practicing, but well, I don't really want to record anything. We've only got, well, we've got 1 million in the bank now. We've actually got over 1 million, 1.2 million. And with that amount of money in the bank, well, what are we choosing to do? Well, I'm trying to get my prestige up. Let's try £10 again for 3 nights. And we're holding more nights now. And we're pressing fire wildly to get through those. It doesn't really matter how much we've made, as long as we're over the 1 million. And definitely, well, over the 1 million is definitely what you need if you want to release your first record, which we're on the verge of doing now. Look at that record, out of sight, boss. Let's record an album. Wow. So what shall we choose? What size of studio? Well, let's go for the best, because we can afford it, but you really do need a little bit more cash than this, because you need to be supporting that with loads of videos. So we're going for the second best. That's not great. And now we can capture some tunes, and after you've captured some music, it will suggest a name for that. And always go with whatever name it suggests if you want to get further in this game, according to the tips that I read. But I'm going to choose a random name wildly for some of these tracks, and we're going to see how far we can get with the game. And so it really is fun sometimes to see the wood panelling on the walls of these studios and all the little touches that you only just see sometimes on these screens. And there is only a few screens in the game, and it can be a bit laborious typing everything in, but don't forget, this is basically a text game that happens to have graphics over it, so it all happens in the background in text. So let's just type in our last name, and once we've got all of the tracks for the entire album, then that's the recording process complete. But Bad Vibes, Phil Spector has stolen the album and is demanding 1 million for the master tapes. So yes, let's spend that 1 million, and hopefully we'll go out and gig straight away, and then hopefully we don't have to release our first record straight away, because we've only just recorded it. So we've paid for that. We've got our master tapes back, and apparently that did happen. Master tapes were stolen and ransomed off. So we're still gigging in stadiums. I'm going for £10 again. Let's not be too greedy. I just want the money back that we've wasted recording the album, because we're going to need that cash. And we've sold out 9,000 out of the 10. That's almost full capacity. And you realise if I charge more money for that, then, well, we're practicing at the moment. I don't really know why I'm practicing after we've recorded the album, but every practice helps. And you might notice the audio soundtrack for this game actually improves as you're playing it. Bad news, charity gigs again, and I hate those screens and those moral dilemmas. So let's see what I choose to do. It's a basic coin toss. I say no, and well, not quite sure, but sometimes it's good to avoid those things and sometimes it isn't. So it's definitely a 50-50. And again, before we start releasing anything, I really want to have a lot more cash in the bank. So let's try 5 nights this time. If we know we can get that amount of money per night, we're really racking through now. We're now going through March, we're going into April already, and we've sold out, we're selling out, and some of the later concerts on a 5-night run will start selling out. And let's try concert halls. Well, sometimes if you choose the wrong thing to go for, and sometimes you have to go backwards to concert halls. Definitely if you find publicity stunt that goes wrong, or sponsorship that goes wrong, or these charity offers that go wrong, then what you'll have to do is go back a level. So we're now ready to release the album, and I really should be releasing a single first of all, but apparently I'm releasing the album and getting that into that chart straight away. So let's again come up with a random name and let's release the album. So definitely always release a single first of all, and then you can get your play on the radio. And now we're releasing a single from that. Let's just select one of those, and that means that we can release the single. And you can see a video opportunity. Some of those cost millions, and we do have 1 million in the bank. And can we afford the Bahamas or Hollywood? Definitely, if you're going for the big ones, spend amount of cash on it. And these will change in, certainly you don't want mind-numbing concert shots, that's the worst one you can choose, and lusty girlies with whips is the best one. And I'm not sure if that costs us money, but it seems to have. So crazy video, let's release something onto the charts. And we're going out on a gig, and between our gigs now we'll get a breakdown of the singles chart and also the albums chart. And so let's see if our new album or our new single has made it on there. And you also get a few snippets of music as well, and it's sometimes funny to read or interpret what the names of the artists are supposed to be. Simply Red, Papa's Got a Brand New Nose Job, and Bros, I'm in Love with the Queen, and Bananarama, Mama's Gonna Buy Me a Trucker. So none of them contain our band name, so that's unfortunate. We really should have released the single first of all. So let's continue. We're now looking at the album chart, and we're looking at Cindy Cleavage. I think that's supposed to be one of the models from the Sun newspaper, and the Sun newspaper is represented by the Stun newspaper in this particular game. You can also hear by the crowd noise if we aren't selling too well, and we only sold 7,000 then. So again, sometimes if you fall over the trap of spending too much money and being overexposure kills you. So you can see you'll get headlines on the front pages every now and again, and I think that's meant to be Samantha Fox on the front cover. And page 3, girls were allowed in the 1980s fully naked on the front cover of newspapers, and that definitely wouldn't be allowed these days. So I'm actually retrying the publicity stunts until I can get that right and get us some good prestige, because you've seen already that, well, I'm not sure if we don't appear on the newspaper headline, it means that it's not good publicity for us. So what we're actually doing is trying to load and save until we get some good publicity, which we haven't managed to do. So that means we're going to have to go out anyway. And I'm choosing to do stadium for 2 nights. And it really does kick us financially if we go backwards in the venues, but you can see we've now sold 100,000 tickets. So our prestige is back up again, and our band reputation is now back up again, and reputation is not represented, unfortunately, in this game. If you're playing this game for the long term, I'd probably recommend releasing your first single in April, and then by this time you should have had enough practice by now to be really good. And don't release that until the music in this game sounds really good and you're selling out big stadiums and getting a fortune. But sometimes if your prestige and rep goes down due to bad publicity or no publicity, it can mean that you have to go backwards, and that delays us. So no 2 players of this game are identical, and you won't find a walkthrough that guides you through it by the hand, because no 2 games play the same way. Unfortunately, we didn't make any progress at all on the singles chart, and by pressing that fire button you can also check out the album chart, and unfortunately we're not on it. So due to bad luck and bad practice and not going for the big stadiums and things like that, bad publicity. Unfortunately, we're still trying to get our foot on the bottom of the charts. In real life, of course, chart success was never easy, but it felt easier in the 1980s. And, well, we reckon that we need a psychedelic firework display in this particular show. That's an odd request, but by this stage, the artists involved will be requesting odd things, and that will cost us a fortune. You can see that the money on the bottom of the screen is taking a nosedive, and as soon as we run out of money, it's game over. We're trying to save the game up and going for publicity stunts, and unfortunately we're not getting our name in the newspaper. Let's try that again, and yes, Rockstar's Laugh of Crime, that's very good. That just means that we get notorious, and notorious is definitely what we want in this particular game, and that just means our street cred goes up. Can we afford to give them extra gifts at this stage? Well, we're just going to give them drinks anyway, because they can rebel, and, well, some more clothing actually. They can rebel, and they can make demands, and they can get arsey a bit later on in the game. Particularly, we have to be out on the road constantly. Let's see, well, we're not selling out, we're only just getting that money back, and we're not, well, we're actually losing money at this stage. We're not gaining a great deal. We're hovering on the border of bankruptcy, and look at that, we're hitting the singles chart, and our first single has now been released, and it's been moving up the charts slowly. We're now up there, number 9. So that's good, we've got something on the charts, and we really won't make a heap of money until the album itself makes it onto the top 10. It only gives us the top 10 charts, but it looks like that we aren't on it. So the Rent Shop Boys unfortunately are beating us again, so that means that we'll have to keep on the road, constantly slogging away and flogging away, no days off. Constantly touring, because if you're not flying out somewhere, then you should be doing a gig, and if you're not gigging, then you should be flying out somewhere else. And that's what life in the 80s was all about, particularly in the early 80s, definitely for this particular band. So let's go out on the road again, let's see if we can fill up something, and hopefully if it's an even number, it means we've filled everything up. And let's go for stadiums. Let's see if we can get away with charging, hopefully, well, £2 plays it safe, just for 2 nights. That makes it more exclusive. Did we sell that out? Yes, we did. And now the money's starting to roll in. It's really looking good for us now, 300,000, and you really want over $1 million by this stage in May. But you can see the first notch of our sales has moved up. But we've got another moral dilemma. Do we take a random charity gig? I say yes, I'd love to help Deaf Aid. And that gives us some positive publicity. That's fantastic. That should mean, hopefully with that positive publicity, our single rises up the charts. Let's have a look. And no, we're still there. We haven't moved. You can see the signs next to the singles chart. It means that we haven't moved. Maybe this is the midweek chart. Nobody's moved from the week before. So that means that that publicity didn't do us any favours whatsoever, and you can see non-appearances as well on the album chart. This game was coded by Colin Jones, and he also coded Slightly Magic, which came out on the ZX Spectrum in 1991. And again, I'm not sure if he converted this game onto the Amiga. And the graphics was by Chris Graham and Brian Hartley. And Brian Hartley also created the graphics for Crystal Kingdom Dizzy and Spellbound Dizzy for Codemasters, and the Codemasters version of Italy 90. As well as Steg the Slug and Cosmic Spacehead, which we might get around to one of these days by Codemasters. And the music was Alistair Brimble and of course he's responsible for 89 separate games on the Lemon Amiga database, one of those being the Alien Breed series, another one being the Body Blows series, and I think also Super Frog. So no need to introduce Alistair Brimble. I'd say the music in this game is definitely the weakest part of it, and it's been released in 1989. Maybe the Alistair Brimble wasn't the powerhouse that he became a bit later on, and it's great that there are jingles in this game, but just like other games that we've seen, sometimes those are a bit flimsy, and maybe they were limited to the amount of jingles that could stick on a disc. For me, it sounds like a procedurally generated amount of jingles, and that really doesn't make harmonic sense usually. But I've no idea, because this game was released on a Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC. You expect that the graphics have been reasonably ported over fairly faithfully. And this game was also released on the Atari ST as well. All of the versions are virtually identical in gameplay and also in graphics. It's just that this game is in 16 colours, which is fantastic. So you can see on the Amiga, we're still touring, we're still trying to get the cash back, and we had over 1 million before we released the album, recorded the album, and that's all disappeared in the record industry. Let's check out the singles chart, and our first single is stalled at number 9. Unfortunately, in the singles chart, that's bad news. Sweat, Sweat, Sweat are up there, and unfortunately we are not on the rest of that singles chart, not on the albums chart either. So pressing fire, we can quickly skip back to the office. We're now in May, so that's the first quarter over with, and we're heading on towards the summer. Let's try a publicity stunt, because we really need something. No, that's Samantha Fox again in the stunt, and we really need something at this point to boost our rep, because I can't sell out. Well, unfortunately I've just died in another nuclear war, so that didn't work. Let's load it up again, and sometimes I'm loading and saving forever until I finally get that to work, and I'm not sure again how much that helps us. We really need to do those publicity stunts and appear on TV and swing around on kids' TV shows and things like that in the 1980s in order to get noticed. We'll have to laugh and make jokes and have a good time and really make ourselves known onto the scene as great guys who produce great music, and for that we'll have to get out there in public and make fools of ourselves and have pies slapped in our faces on Tiswas by the Phantom. And it's something that everybody had to do in the 1980s. All bands had to go through it. So this takes us all the way back, and it's a pity that there aren't more screens going on with references from the 1980s. So I'm risking going for 4 nights now. I really need that cash, and I haven't sold out the venue, but we are getting some cash in. And oh no, the first single has now dropped down a place. People are getting bored of the first single. That's not very good, and unfortunately you can only release one single at a time, and once that stalls then you'll just have to release another one, and the first single will then drop out of the charts completely. So looks like we've survived another massacre from some guys trying to sponge off us, and so you'll have to put up with those segues and be prepared to get wiped out at any point. We're going for stadiums. We really need to sell these stadiums out like we used to do in order to launch another single. Let's go for 5 nights. I really want 1 million in order to launch the second single, because don't forget that comes with a video. And pop videos in those days didn't really exist, and most pop videos were simply the band speaking into a microphone and singing into that, and maybe you'll get somebody dancing or something happening with the band sitting around in the UK whilst they're singing the song. And it took a really imaginative band to take the pop video out of that basic formula and take it into places like Sri Lanka and sitting on boats in Antigua and hanging around being hungry like wolves. And after that happened, the pop video scene in the UK changed, and all of a sudden everybody, and I do mean everybody, had to go out of the country in order to film pop videos, and there were guys running down beaches and things like that. It all happened, and it was all influenced back in those days. So it all had to start somewhere, and it did all start somewhere, and this is when live stage shows were also requiring that bit of extra effort. Plastic surgery is required in this particular case. Let's go for that, because we want these guys to be young and handsome, and if they're handsome guys, that really makes the scene really worth it. It means teenage girls will follow us and collect our posters and stick our posters up on the wall, and you really can't rule out the teenage girls aspect sometimes because they've got money to burn. And being a pop idol back in those days meant all of the merch which went with it, and definitely all the posters which people cut out of magazines, and the pop magazines were another venue which sadly isn't represented in this game. And so we've got another organisation in Taiwan is pirating our records. What do? We can do nothing. We can sue them, we can send them the boys round to club them to death, or we can buy them out. And if we buy them out, we've now got 1 million, we can buy them out. We can send some boys round, or we can do nothing. That will impact our album sales, so we've gone around to send in the heavies. I'm not sure what that impact will do, but we didn't buy them out because the album isn't very popular in the first place. Let's release our second single. Let's go for another one at random, and let's see now. Cecil B. DeMille, he's going to be our director. And can we afford the Caribbean? Well, not at the moment. We'll have to settle for Hollywood. And Busty Lovely's in the Shower appears to be the top answer in this case. Let's go for that. You can see that money really crashing down now. That means the first single will now drop out of the charts, and that was a big flop. And sometimes you can have a great first single that smashes the charts, but usually people only release small first singles and didn't really get started until later on. ZZ Top, I noticed, probably didn't have a one-hit wonder with the first single, and all these bands, some of which some of people might remember from back in those days, if you were alive back in those days. And we're trying 4 nights now because we've got that rep, hopefully, and it isn't quite a sellout, but I don't mind not selling out on the first couple of days. And it looks like we're playing 3 nights, and hopefully the final night will give us the big wad. There you go, 100,000. So it really does help if you get tons of money, and the sales figures in the bottom corner, they're now plunging into the floor. So we've now released our second single, and that won't impact the charts straight away. We'll have to wait until the end of the week, and these games are played every week. That singles chart will come up, and so you've got a whole week to manage it. We're now in July at the moment, and I'm actually recording this voiceover in July, the 14th to be exact. And singles chart, we've now gone up. We're now at new entry number 10, ladies and gentlemen. It's our band up there in that singles chart. That means sales are now going up because it's the single plus the album as well. Rockstar duped by sick old charity. Oh no, we've just made a bad charity run, which means we'll have to load that all up again. And loading up again, I've just done a few gigs as well. Let's cut that time out. You can see a great load of money in the bank. And sometimes if you load a game, don't forget if you've released the single in the meantime, you're going to have to release it all over again because you've just loaded up from a save. And so we've now got tons of money in the bank. Let's move on and let's see if we're doing anything. And yes, we're now up there. Now up there at number 4. We're now rocketing up that chart. It's just behind Bananarama and the Pet Shop Boys. and the pixies, I'm not quite sure if they're right up there, but you can see that we're now having an impact. That will mean that we do have some cash coming in finally. After playing this now for almost 50 minutes, we're now guaranteed to have some cash. Unfortunately, I'm making a bad mistake, because if we release our third single too early, it means the second single will now drop out of the charts, and I'm doing this just because we can afford to do it. But because our first single will now plummet out of the charts and we didn't wait for that to get to number 1, that means unfortunately we cannot make money out of that, so that means the sales will go down as well. So that was a bad move. Always wait and see, and wait for every single to top out and see how far it's going to get in the charts, and then when it's on its way down you can release another single straight away as a follow-up. And I think I got rid of my second single just as it was heading up towards the top of the charts. And so we've released the third single now. Again, picking a random name, we're now at number 5 again because of our reputation. But the most important thing is the album chart, and if we have a number 1 hit single, that should mean that we get a number 10 on the album chart and we can start making some progress. We haven't made really much progress, and you can see a dive on the sales chart when we canned the hit single last time, so definitely don't can hit singles if you are going to play this game. So moving up in the singles charts, it looks like we're now releasing the 4th and the last single, and it's the 4th and the last single. We can release 4 singles denoted by the records in the bottom left corner of the screen, and our chart progress is denoted by the colour of those records. If it's grey like that, it means that we haven't succeeded in doing anything, and I think we can get a gold, silver and bronze disc in the bottom corner, and maybe a platinum disc as well if our records do very well. And at the moment I'm earning the millions. It's not hard to get the millions in this game, but it looks like we're canning singles before they get to the top. So this being our 4th single, and our final single from the album, and maybe, I'm not sure if we can record a brand new album or not, but you can see within a year we only get to release those 4 singles, so it's make or break time. We're in September, that means October, November, December. We've only got 3 months now until the Christmas period, so this is our last make or break now with our last single, and so we're gonna see if that makes an impact now on the charts. And that's a good start. We're in at number 7, and number 7 is great, but unfortunately we're still not on the album chart, so we're running out of time now to even get on the album chart, and we're touring like crazy, but it doesn't mean that we can get anywhere except for getting more cash. And at this stage, now that we've recorded and released everything, we really don't need that cash, but it'll help with the figures at the end of the month. So let's skip on forward. That's the end of another week. Let's see if we've risen up any higher. I think our highest release has been 4 so far, and yes, here it is. 4 is our 4th single, and it's on the climb, moving up. It's going to break up through the borderline, so let's see if that can reach number 1. This game, Star Ate My Hamster, was inspired by a cover image which appeared in the Sun newspaper. That appeared in 1986, and that was March 13th, 1986. Freddie Star Ate My Hamster, which was based on a bogus account of Freddie Starr putting the hamster between 2 slices of bread and pretending to eat it, and that leaked out to the newspapers 5 years after it happened. And the game features Star Ate My Hamster on the box art, and you can also see some great images on the back of the box as well. And so this was based on the Sun newspaper, which used to be a great big newspaper when they still had newspapers in Great Britain. and you can see some art which appeared in magazines as well. There hasn't been too many of these types of games, and you can see all of the people that you can choose from as well on the original version of the game, which was quite something. This is taken from the ZX Spectrum version, and this had a reboot in 2001 as the Millennium Edition, Rockstar Millennium. That came out on the Commodore 64, the ZX Spectrum and the Plus 4, and that featured a whole new batch of characters, and those are based on the Millennium. Unfortunately, some of those have passed away already, but that's what you got, a 1.1 version. And you can see that some of the icons on the original ZX Spectrum were actually drawn from actual images which were taken from actual publications, and you can see Robert Maxwell is bailing out Sinclair, and they've digitised Paul McCartney from that image. And apparently one of the people that bought the game, their mother reported it to WH Smith's, and they had to pull the game from their shelves due to an in-joke which was in a publication which was included in the box. And I can't find much of a reference to that apart from an Oedipus complex joke where it basically says, "Please come home, your mother forgives you, mother." So I'm not quite sure whether that was the joke in question, but that's the only one that I noticed that might have been close to the knuckle. And so that's released in the box, and maybe they didn't even release that newspaper in the box after that, and maybe it was pulled from the shelves, and that means that that newspaper is worth a lot. I'm not quite sure, but the main thing is to check out the singles chart. We're still climbing and still rising. We're at number 3, and that means we can really claw in the big bucks once we get to number 3. So we only have to beat Vic Sinex, and we only have to beat Dross as well, and that's not too bad because Dross are only a fad. We've now got over 2 million in the bank, and we're really packing out those stadiums, and we really are the Wild Boys at the moment, and that means that we can really continue raking in those little bits of cash here and there, and hopefully the sales chart will continue. Hopefully, well, we're on our last release, so you're gonna have to just say a prayer for that, and hopefully it'll make it, and so we can continue on, and hopefully we can afford at this stage to take a holiday down to Rio. And fortunately, Rockstar punches Bishop. That's a fantastic headline. That means we get some more prestige back as well. So we can't release any more videos. We've already released all of the videos that we can do, so that's all the girls on film taken care of. So now that we've got My Own Way, we can continue until the end of the year. We're now in October, so let's see, let's check out the singles chart, and oh no, we've slipped down now to number 5, and that's, well, as far as I've got with the game now. We're running out of time to get anywhere on the albums chart. We're only at number 5 on the singles chart, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to reach anywhere on the album chart, or whether we have actually got on there at any point during this playthrough. And it looks like we can release a single, and well, we have released tons already. Let's try another one. This is New Religion, so let's now spend the maximum. Spend the maximum. It doesn't really matter at this point. I thought you could only have 4 maximum, but according to my reckoning, we've now released 5 singles, and that's a last ditch attempt again, because we're now in October, and so, well, the sales have barely scratched the bottom of that sales chart in the bottom corner, and so this is the last ditch attempt, and we're still being sponsored by Sony, and that 100,000 that they gave us right at the beginning of our career is looking pretty shady now, because that disappeared in a flash. So we have now released a new single. It hasn't charted this week, and the albums chart, well, Bananarama, it's all starting to look pretty samey at this point. So we're going to play it until the end of December, and then it will boot us out of the game, and that's why this video is the length that it is. So it's interesting that Freddie Starr is now passed away, and he didn't really eat a hamster, he just put that between two slices of bread, and the woman's complaining that he slapped loads of butter on it and pretended to eat it, and it was just a joke. But it only came out after his death pretty recently what actually happened, and the headline was repeated again. He didn't really eat a hamster. So we're now on our 5th single according to my reckoning, and according to my eyes it says we're ocho, number 8. So we are now climbing up the charts finally again, and we're big in Italy apparently, so that's fantastic. It just means that we can get on with the job of trying to make the last of our money, and we're still struggling to get that million in the bank, and I'm saving it up. That usually means I'm going for a publicity stunt. And that didn't work, but we're continuing anyway because it's right at the end of the year. Rockstar is duped by a charity. It looks like we had to reload it all over again. Singles chart, we're now at number 3. So this game does have some bad points. You have to reload it all over again if you make a real hash of the charities, because you'll have to drop down 2 venues, and that usually means that you can't get enough money for your next single, and that's a bad point, and it really shouldn't penalise you all that much, but it does. And so here we go, fingers crossed now. We're not at number 3 in the singles chart, that's actually great news. We're not at number 2 either. From Shakespeare's Sister, where are we? We're at number 1. Dun, dun, dun. Number 1 hit single. That's definitely a view to a kill. So number 1. That's fantastic. So now we've got our number 1, we can start hopefully to make an impression on the albums chart. Nothing at the moment. Nothing's going on. And so we'll just have to wait patiently. It's now the 13th of November. You can see the sales chart is now rocketing up, and we've released 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 singles. So this is virtually the end of my playthrough. There weren't too many games like this, but there was another one, I think called Rock and Roll on the Amiga. I hadn't seen that, and I think John Hare was going to release a rock and roll style game as well, and nothing ever came of that because the whole thing was cancelled, because the whole thing was on CD-ROM and the whole thing just took way too long. And it would be a great, fantastic idea to have one of these games nowadays, because they have to go on games like I'm a Celebrity and Popstar and Rockstar and the X Factor and the Z Factor and all the rest of it. So it would be great to release a game like this and try and get people in the papers. And if you come on to TV shows and say you don't like a particular artist and get loads of bad rep for that, then that's just too bad. No movement in the singles charts, we're still at number 1. And Bruce Everest on 45 is taking up the albums chart, but finally our greatest hits is now at number 8. Number 8, ladies and gentlemen, on the albums chart. Finally, that almost doubles our sales records overnight, because now we're getting singles and albums chart. We've got a number 1 single. I didn't see too many magazine review scores for this game. In fact, I only noticed a couple of magazine scores. One of those was the Games Machine, who awarded this 8%, and obviously Lemon Amiga also gave this a score. It's currently 74%, which gives this around about 7.5 out of 10. Just when you thought everything was rosy, we've been duped by another sick old psycho charity. That means that we've got bad publicity just when we needed great publicity the most. Well, if we've been duped by a sick old charity, maybe that'll actually give us some good publicity, because at least that gets us in the papers, and at least we haven't died from nuclear war. So this game does have its funny side, and I did enjoy myself playing this game and making all these kinds of mistakes. So I definitely recommend this game if you've got a penchant to play it. And number 2 now, falling down in the singles chart, and we're at number 7 in the albums chart. So you can play this on many different platforms, including the Commodore Plus 4 computer, which also got the Millennium Edition, so you can play this on all the 8 bits. And this being a Codemasters release, this was one of their first forays into the Amiga scene after porting over the Dizzies. And even now the Amiga was struggling with ports, and 8-bit ports were still flooding onto the scene, mostly ported across from the Atari ST. And do you think a giant laser show? Yes, I think we'll pay for a giant laser show in this case, because it's December and we've only got precious few days remaining now until the end of our virtual career. And I'm not sure if it gives us any big bonuses for the amount of millions that we've got in the bank at the end of it. And so let's quickly move straight through the charts again. And in this perfectly ordinary world, let's see where we are. Still at number 2 with our 5th release. And number 2 isn't bad. And well, that's all we need for now. And look at that, we're still moving ahead on the albums chart. We're slipping down on the singles, but we're still moving ahead on the album chart. Skipping forwards now, we'll check out the last few chart positions. Definitely, we really need it on. Unfortunately, we're down to number 6 now on the albums, so that's as good as we're going to get, and it's just in time because it's December the 18th. So we managed to get halfway up the sales chart, and we didn't manage to get a number 1 album, but we did get actually a number 1 single, and we did get lots of publicity, and we did experience all of the parts of this game. And the end of year charts are coming thick and fast now. No movement at all in the singles chart with our final single. And let's see now, number 5. Oh, wait, number 4. This is the albums. Yes, it's moved up again with the albums chart. So at this stage, every least bit of publicity will really help us. So there really isn't too many more of these games. And as I say, it really was fun to experience this one. It's rather unique. and it's not a bad game by Codemasters. I'm not sure how much this was released for, but maybe $8.99. It has that kind of budget price feel to it, and definitely any more than $8.99 this would be a bit too expensive. So if you have this game, maybe it is worth fortune, particularly if you have the one with the insert in it. And on the 8-bit platforms that didn't come with the inserted magazines, so they must have been talking about the ST or the Amiga version when they made that comment about it being pulled from the shelves, and that might mean it's quite rare. And so definitely eBay prices, boxed copies of this game will sell for a fortune. And so I think you can get boxed copies of the original cassette tape version. I'm not quite sure, but usually they came in clear plastic boxes. And we're now up at number 3 on the albums chart. That's a massive round of applause for our album, and I blame the machines. It's absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately we're on the 25th of December. That means we can no longer get the top of the thing because we're already at the end of the year, and that means we might as well spend all our money on our stars and maybe gig our way through to the end of the year. And let's have 7 nights and let's continue all the way on to next year. I'm not sure if that's even possible. And let's see if this game gives us an ending screen after all of that. What it will do is it will give us the final charts, and our final single is dropping down the charts. That's not too bad. And the final end of year charts, it's now, well, we're not at 6, we're not at 5. That's good news. And you can press that 5 button. Oh, we've dropped down to number 4. That's okay, because at least we managed to get somewhere finally on the album charts right at the end of the year, and that felt rewarding. So that's the end of our progress. That's the end of this game. So thank you very much, and I'll see you again on another one sometime soon. Thank you.